one minute I'm exhilarated, the next minute I'm shit scared. And I think that when you're an entrepreneur, you have to live within those boundaries. You're going to have days where you feel there's no way that you can make it. Everything's ending. All the money you put into it's going to be gone. It's going to be a failure. It's not going to work. And you just got to go back to work and see what you can do and figure it out.
Welcome to The Visionary Entrepreneur. My name is Dane Dunlap.
And I'm Nicholas Genovese.
This is a podcast where we interview entrepreneurs about their story and visions for the future. We're here to create a space to network and to learn from each other's experiences. Hey guys, welcome back to The Visionary Entrepreneur. Today we have Kent Thexton with us. Kent is the president and CEO of a large publicly traded Internet of Things and telecommunications company. Kent has also been in senior management at a lot of other large telecommunication companies. And he's also been the founder of a lot of companies and has also founded his own VC. So a pretty special guest. Kent, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk to us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Dane. Well, in the thumbnail, my career background, I started, did an engineering degree, then an MBA, and started off at Rogers Wireless very early in the cellular growth market at Rogers out of Toronto. I spent 8 years there, started in marketing, and within a few years was running marketing across Canada, and then took on sales and customer care in time to be chief operating officer of Rogers. I was then recruited by British Telecom, moved to the UK to help turn around their UK wireless business, BT Cellnet. That went well, took them from last to first, and then led to an opportunity in 2001 to help lead the spin out of all of British Telecom's wireless operations. So we formed a large Northern European company called O2, went on to build a very strong brand, and I ran everything non-voice as well as the marketing group. So it was early in the text messaging mobile data era. We grew O2 to the highest percentage of revenue from mobile data in the world outside of Japan. And that led to a significant transaction. We sold to Telefonica for $35 billion in 2005. I moved back to Canada after 6-7 years abroad, and I moved to Vancouver and started doing more entrepreneurial activity, ran a company in Silicon Valley, and then I went and raised a bunch of venture capital and built a large US MVNO. That led me into venture. I ended up taking a managing director role to help lead Canada's largest venture fund called OMERS Ventures. That led to me starting out my own fund called Scale Up Ventures, and we did B2B SaaS focused companies with 8 of the largest corporations in Canada as the LPs and the investors in the fund. And also an emerging practice on artificial intelligence. Throughout that period, I was on the Sierra Wireless board, and I had been chairman for about 3 years. We were focusing to transform the company from just hardware into full solution stack. We decided to make a CEO change to accelerate those efforts. It wasn't my intention to take the role, but while we were doing the search committee kept asking me about taking the role, and they convinced me and I convinced myself. So I took over as CEO at the end of 2018. So I've been doing that just under a year and a half, taking it through a significant, challenging, but exciting transformation in the Internet of Things space.
That's amazing. So, as you know, this podcast is kind of surrounded around giving young entrepreneurs advice and kind of giving them a path. So what we wanted to go through today was a little bit of what you look for, obviously with your experience in VC, what you look for when you're investing in a tech startup, and then as well as seeing both sides of moving up the ranks and going into a senior management role, and also being the founder of your own company, kind of the difference between those two and experience versus vision. So we kind of just wanted to pick your brain about what you look for in a startup company.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that the team is the most critical thing. So no matter how good the idea is, no matter how it's progressing, unless it's an A team, then it's not something I'd invest in, because every startup is going to face intense challenges. It's going to be a competitor. The market's going to shift. The product needs to flex. Revenue growth, not what expected. A security hack. There's going to be something that comes up, and it's going to test the team, significantly. And so you got to invest in team that has resilience, smarts, energy, passion for what it is that they're doing. So passing that hurdle, then really it's getting into, what is the idea? what is the opportunity to create a new market or build differentiation or go in and restructure a market, be a disruptor in an existing market. So what's the big idea and the credibility of that? And so I think that, in the early stage, so when someone's pitching a fresh startup and they're looking to get engaged, those would be the things that I would look at. In my venture patch, we would typically not invest in that sort of raw idea stage. That's really the domain where you're looking for angel investors, friends and family money to help get the company going. So we'd like to invest both. Omer's was even later stage, but at scale up, we would do seed or Series A investing. So the first sort of institutional money that would come in, and at that point, we're looking for the first proof of product market fit. So the product has been developed. So maybe it's been a year of friends and family money, or a couple of years with friends and family money and some angel investors, and they have a product and they look to scale it. So then we're really evaluating the team, the market, and now we're taking a look at the product. What's the differentiation? What's the ability to grow? And lots of times you can have a winning product, but then distribution strategy becomes critical in how to succeed. So what is how are you reaching customers? And many times it can be a great idea, but it's so expensive to acquire customers. A consumer product requires mass amounts of advertising, and really is not the domain for a startup. It's why we focused on B2B SaaS. When you can solve a business problem and do more direct selling, you're more likely to be successful. But we would get into to key metrics that we would look at. So when you're acquiring a customer, you figure out what's the lifetime value of a customer. So what's the profit margin that you expect to make from a customer over a reasonable period of time, 3 to 5 years, discounted cash flow back to what's that worth. And then look at the customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost you to acquire that customer? What's the marketing effort? We really look at funnel performance there, from getting leads, taking it through to marketing qualified leads. If you're using inside sales, sales qualified lead, through to a prospect, getting them to a proof of concept and getting them live. That whole journey, what's the CAC, the customer acquisition cost? And when we could find companies that had a great entrepreneur in a big market and the LTV to CAC was greater than 3 to 1, home run, we're off.
You come up with the idea, they come up with good work ethic and passion for a year or two. But I think the hardest part is to keep going once a lot of the issues hit. How do you determine whether or not this is a good fit for your company or not? What are like the red flags when you see, okay, he might have a good idea, he's pretty passionate about it, but I don't think he will overcome these issues? What are red flags you're like, okay, this guy is not the right fit?
Yeah, well, it's kind of an interviewing process at that point in time. So, you go through quite a few meetings. You start off with initial pitch. I'd like to keep the first meeting to 15 to 30 minutes. And if an entrepreneur can get their idea across and excite you in 15 minutes, then they have something important. Because if they can't pitch me, then they're going to have to raise money multiple times. They're going to have to sell to customers. They're going to have to attract world-class talent. So that ability to pitch is really important. So that'd be one of the skills I'd be looking for right at the beginning. And then as you go into more, in-depth meetings and ultimately have them come in and present to the full fund, to the investment committee, then you see it a little bit under pressure, and they're going to get thrown some wild questions are going to be, I don't believe you can do that, or what makes you think you can do that, or someone else is doing that, it's not differentiated, how are you going to react to that? So see how they respond under pressure, able to think on their feet and drive. So you get to a level of comfort through probably 3 to 4 meetings of going through, and then there's going to be quite a bit of work around the financial model in terms of testing their assumptions. And if an entrepreneur comes in and well, every curve is up and to the right when you're getting pitched, but if it's just so unrealistic and unsupportable, there's places that you can have a fail, and you just stop that process because you lose trust of the entrepreneur. So I think those are the sort of the test points. How are they going to perform when one of these big tests come? I mean, that's really, I think, the magic and what separates good VCs from less successful VCs. You're going to have in your portfolio of investments some great ideas and good management teams. It ends up not working. Life's about luck, timing, and skill. But you want to have enough at-bats and have the persistent and resilient, passionate entrepreneurs that are going to work through some of those tough patches and turn it into a great success.
Something you said that I really agree with is the importance of the management team. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think that all they need is just one great idea, right? They come up with that idea and then they're golden, and they focus so much on that product fit and that idea. But have you ever seen a mediocre idea, an idea that was just okay, but the management team was just so good that they carried it to success? Or, talk about how important management is versus that idea.
Well, let me answer your question a different way. I mean, some of the famous pivots that have come around, Stuart Butterfield, who founded Slack, it's a great story where he'd had his first company success, which sort of had been a pivot. He'd sold it, made quite a bit of money. And so then he wanted to go out and build the world's greatest game. And so he built this fabulous team. He had people from, Japan and Asia. And so they needed a way to do all this development from remote sites. I mean, we're all doing it now during COVID-19, but, back 10 years ago, it was less common. So they built a communications platform. And then this was a game that, never got to a conclusion. It just was a game you just kept playing. Well, there was no product market fit. He raised a ton of money because of his previous success. But he had built a great management team. So as the money was running out and the game was not being successful, they pivoted and said, you know what, this communications link that we built so that we can do all this development, it's pretty cool. Let's productize that. And hence Slack became a multi-billion-dollar success. So there's been lots of pivots where, you need to be, I think that one of the things that's key for entrepreneurs is being able to really be able to iterate fast with the market, test and learn, and being able to navigate. So you need to pivot, mildly to the left or 90 degrees to the left. You have to figure out where the market is. And once you get in there and engage with customers and listen well, you can make those sort of changes. So mediocre idea, being a successful, nothing comes to mind really, because I think that probably the ones that have been successful have met some innate customer need in a better way than other products are. So sometimes it's about the UI. I mean, I think that, the iPod was the greatest example of that. There was a million MP3 players. I had a drawer full of them. The UIs were horrible. The content wasn't there. And Steve Jobs and Apple, they didn't invent anything new with the original iPod. They just made the UI great and they made the content available. And, so I think that's a lot about it's the presentation layer as well.
Interesting. The Lean Startup is one of the books that's out there and talks a lot about, research, put your product out there, and then pivot, right? And so how important do you think that is to just not put all your eggs in one basket, make this perfect product, and then try to just make that work, and you don't really know, you haven't done the research. So, you talked about that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think that, I think trying to get the perfect product before you go to market is a huge mistake. I think that I always say no plan survives contact with the enemy. So if you think you're going to get a perfect product, you're wrong. And so if you spent, an extra 6 months or a year refining something to exactly what you think the market wants, the market's going to tell you what the market wants. So get it 80 or 90% of there and start getting customers into trial, get those early adopters. It's absolutely critical. I mentioned that we built, O2 to the global leader in mobile data, and we just had a really strong iteration process. So we were constantly getting to the market, finding out customers. We're using the interface on our phones. I remember we would have developers in one meeting room. This is back in the early 2000s. We didn't have all the technology of today, with video cameras, and we'd just pull customers off the street in London, in the UK, and we'd have them, use the new game or the new news service, or the new content feed. And in the room with the developers, they'd be watching it, and the moderator would say, "Okay, well, tell us what you think about this game," and they'd be going and they'd get stuck and they couldn't figure something out. And the developers in the other room go, "The button's right there. The button's right there." But, the customer didn't get it. The customer didn't get it. And so we would iterate, and we were able to, beat Vodafone and Orange and all the big telcos in Europe by just having a faster iteration, by listening to the market and continuing to evolve and evolve and evolve. So I always try to get my entrepreneurs to get something to market quickly and learn, be getting those feedback loops. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Now, moving on to our next topic, vision versus experience. You had a lot of experience before you decided to start your own thing, to start your own VCs. What do you think is more important, or what do you think is a better route, to start as an entrepreneur and have a vision of being the entrepreneur and learning like that, or learning through failure, or learning through experience at a big corporation through previous success and learning from your boss?
That's a really tough question. I think that there's no right or wrong answer to that one. Some of it has to do with your risk appetite. I was able to go and build success, and then on the back of that, able to take more risks and do more things. When I did within British Telecom, I did a sort of inside British Telecom startup, and it was one of the world's first mobile internet platforms. We called it Genie. Got BT to invest a bunch of money in it, but ran it like a startup. And the guy that I had, who was sort of the technical visionary on it, came to me, and I'll never forget this expression. I've used it with almost every company I've invested in. And he goes, Kent, 1 minute I'm exhilarated, the next minute I'm shit scared. And I think that when you're an entrepreneur, you have to live within those boundaries. You're going to have days where you feel there's no way that you can make it. Everything's ending. All the money you put into it's going to be gone. It's going to be a failure. It's not going to work. And you just got to go back to work and see what you can do and figure it out. So there's I have an incredible amount of respect for entrepreneurs. Many of them fail one or two or multiple times before they make it. So I think that there's some human wiring that lets you do that. I think that the path of bringing experience to as well can be very valuable. There are people, certain personalities are going to fit better in a big corporation. They have a lower risk profile. They like process. They like more stability. And they're probably not going to be the right fit for the, kind of the wild, wild west of being an entrepreneur and living by the seat of your pants a little bit. I think the other piece is that, you have to, that exhilaration I mentioned, that has to be like a drug that drives you on, that you're creating something, and that piece is going to be strong. So it's when you're ready to take that step. When I've seen entrepreneurs that are, contemplating jumping out and starting something, but they're, they got a mortgage and young kids, I kind of go like, probably not the right time for you. Like you're going to the stats are you're more likely to fail than win. So, you ought to be ready to have that, be ready to take that journey. So it's like, you're going on around the world sailing race. Don't do that if you don't like to have some solitude and loneliness. It's going to be a tough journey. They're going to be nothing more exciting, rewarding, and exhilarating if you do it. But you have to be prepared for, it might take a long time. It might take a number of starts, and you have to be ready for that path.
I liked when you said that it's, it needs to be kind of like a drug. It needs to be exhilarating. For you, having seen both sides, what do you feel brought you more fulfillment? Kind of moving up and being a significant part of a company, of a large corporation, or just, doing something for yourself?
That's a good question, Dane. I guess I'd like to visit both sides of that reality. So I wouldn't give one of them up. So I guess I'll be greedy and I'll say all of the above.
Well, that's fair enough. I could. I'm sure that would be a nice option for all of us. Get a little bit of everything.
One thing, are you still working out for your triathlons? Are you still training?
Yeah.
Dane was telling me that you're like big into triathlons and you have a history there as well.
Well, I respect you guys with your doing your school and your tennis. I think I actually like to invest in entrepreneurs with a sports background. So I think that the self-discipline that comes with training is something that translates well into business. So, I raced track and field for Canada when I was younger. I ran a sub 4-minute mile when I was 21, and injuries kept me out of the '84 Olympics. And after that, I moved on with my life. But I continue to stay fit, and triathlons are something work for me. So I went to the 2013 World Championships for Canada in the age group in the UK, and then the 2018 in Australia. So every 5 years you move up in age groups. So I like to take advantage of going out there. Typically win my age group in Canada. I think I finished 14th in the UK. So yeah, no, I still enjoy it. I was on my bike at 6 a.m. this morning and did a good 30K ride, and it's a better day when I get a little exercise in the morning.
I'm still scared of coming home and getting with you on the track. I don't really want to tangle with that. I think you'd kick my butt. So
Well, glad to do that at some point.
Yeah. The last thing that we always cover on this podcast is the visions of the future. So, whether that be economically or in tech, socially, kind of just want to pick your brain on what your vision of the future is and how you see us going in the future.
Well, I'll probably steer that a bit to my IoT space, if you don't mind, just because I think that we're on a path to everything being connected, and cloud has and is eating the world. So the two of the three most valuable companies are Microsoft and Amazon, and powered by what they've done in the cloud. So AWS and Azure, are massive growth and profit engines for those companies. They've been able to take compute power, take away all the barriers for companies to be able to utilize it, build world-class AI engines, and build insights. And companies that aren't doing that aren't going to be able to win. So unless we talk about being close to the customer at scale, you do that through the cloud. And where tech is going, you have Moore's law and others where you continue to get more processing power, cheaper prices. So on the Internet of Things side, we are now down to modules that will cost $5, and the battery life will be 5 to 10 years, and they have enhanced connectivity. So whether they're in compromised environments like a building or a basement or very rural, they can still connect. And so when you get that ability to very easily capture sensor data from the edge and put it into the cloud, you can start to do really amazing things. So we have a big focus in the industrial IoT market. We think every piece of industrial equipment will be connected to the cloud, and that's that's circa $20 billion TAM, total available market in that space. And so that the sort of human engagement that's required to be able to see go in and one of our customers, one of the world's largest air compressor companies. So they capture all their sensor data. So instead of having to send somebody out to do a preventative maintenance check on the machine, they're getting the vibrations, the run hours, the heat, all of the sensor data that can tell them when that compressor, and many factories run on compressed air. So if the air compressor goes down, the factory goes down. So they're able to tell, and they're able to send people out, at the right time. They're able to sell packages for preventative maintenance, and they're able to learn how their customers are using the product and go into future design cycles. So that sort of highly integrated connectivity, I think, is going to be something that really happens in the B2B space. We see things on with it, be it Nest and home automation and things. And that's in a bit of a different dimension. That's sort of a nice to have, but I think in the business world it becomes an absolute necessity. And then the second layer of that is AI. So AI is going to change the world. The progress has been substantial. The godfather of AI out of Toronto, U of T, and so Toronto's a great AI hotspot for the world. But it's going to be able to take information and be able to make calculated results. So even fields are already changing. So you wouldn't want to be an X-ray person anymore, because AI can do a better job of reading an X-ray than a human can. So those sorts of things continue to go on. Probably somewhere around half of jobs today will be affected by AI, either eliminated or changed. But it'll create many new opportunities, going forward. So I think that, if I was advising somebody and getting into a career today, I would really think about where's the path of AI go, and get into something where there's going to need that ability we bring as humans. But anything that's transactional oriented, or just being able to take inputs of some variety, make a judgment on it. Ultimately the machines are going to do that better than us. And so, but that's going to be, I think the mega trend. You need You need IoT data to get the sensor. You need cloud to have the computational power. And then the AI engines are going to change things.
Yeah, with tech being more prevalent, I guess you need to find creative ways to bring value to business and to society. So I guess that's the new issue for society to figure out.
Do you think, are we in a place where we're just scratching the surface, or are we in the midst? We're already in the midst of it.
Oh, we're just at the very early innings of this one. Maybe bottom of the first.
Wow.
Okay.
That's either reassuring or really scary, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, but great talking to you. Good program, and we'll look forward to seeing you up here. And we'll get out to the track.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you so much for being on, Kent.